I'm Gerard Agostinello, and for our fourth presentation, I will be looking at Chapter 9, What is Objectification, and Chapter 10, How to Look at Vita Guerra, and then looking at them in reference to Chapter 4, Existential Dynamics of Theorizing Black Invisibility. I'll start with Chapter 9. So, what is objectification? The term has been vaguely used to refer to cases involving the treatment of a person as an object. Kant's idea of objectification is about reducing another person to that of an instrument, and for Kant, it is our humanity which gives us the ability to rationalize, so if that humanity is stripped, and someone is used merely as a means to an end, then that is what it means to be objectified. Kant strictly states that a person should never be treated as a means, but always as an end in itself. Due to this, Kant would say that any form of objectification would harm one's humanity greatly in our society. Nussbaum, on the other hand, takes a broader view on objectification. Nussbaum states that there are 7 notions to objectification. The first is instrumentality, then denial of autonomy, inertness, fungibility, viability, ownership, and then denial of subjectivity. Nussbaum emphasizes that objectification often involves treatment and not instrumentalization. Nussbaum argues that you can be objectifying someone while not being morally objectifiable. This is the case of using a lover as a pillow that we described in class. In turn, objectification's true meaning lies somewhere in the middle of these two. Unlike what Kant says, not all forms of objectification are negative, and in relation to Nussbaum, not everything we do is objectifying someone else. Her term is too broad and allows almost everything to be seen as an objectifying act. Chapter 10 demonstrates how race and gender are aspects of an individual which functions as a way to separate people by diminishing some members of society while privileging others. This chapter helps our understanding of how we conceptualize looking at bodies, in particular at American female bodies of color. All the different ways of looking at Vita in this chapter are all forms of reduction. These are all reflections of a greater society trend. This idea of an aesthetic ideal is potentially harmful. We see it today in society, and it takes many forms. One of these could be in how little Kim has been looking more white recently. Instead of embracing her beauty, she feels pressure from society to conform to a more generally accepted populace. After reading through all the lenses one can look at Vita Guerra through, you surmise that it is ultimately a societal problem. Somewhere in history, we stopped looking at people for who they are and started looking at people for what they are. We try to fit people into a box, and that is not how society should work. We can bring what we read in these 2 chapters back to Chapter 4, the existential dynamics of theorizing black invisibility. Our bodies are our perspectives of the world. I've already analyzed the chapter, so instead I want to talk more about how the chapters relate to what we had just read. The idea of existentialism outlined in Chapter 4 is a perfect segue to talking about objectification in Chapter 9. Theories of existentialism allows you to see yourself as a subject and an object in the world. The idea of objectification is that you shouldn't be treated as just an object. Our existentialism is what makes us uniquely human, and by thinking as an existential thinker, you should be able to observe the world as an object and a subject, never treating anyone as merely just an object. Other theories in Chapter 4 line up very well with our last chapter. There is an issue with overdeterminalization in that blackness becomes all of who you are. Being black in an anti-black world is a problem due to the lack of a black perspective and the loss of an identity. This aligns with the theories of how people of opposing races and genders are seen as different in society and how that's problematic. Going back to the little Kim example that I used before, if she felt as if she had an identity in our society, she wouldn't feel the need to change herself. The fact that in 2016 that there is still a systematic racism is what leads so many to a skewed perspective of the world. We need to continue to break down barriers and begin to see people for who they truly are, rather than for what they look like or where they come from.